in order to become analytical about this, so what is this form of didactic pedagogy? So we've just done a kind of an impressionistic, very subjective view of what it feels like to be a person in those classrooms through a number of writers and a number of people who are writing autobiographies later in their life. What I want to do now is I want to become analytic about didactic pedagogy, and I've got here 8 dimensions that I'm going to examine. And in order to build this idea of a paradigm, I'm going to apply these same 8 criteria, the 8 issues in these 8 dimensions, when we come in later videos to discuss authentic pedagogy, what's its shape and form, and then transformative pedagogy, what's its shape and form. So I'll go through each of these one by one to analyse didactic pedagogy. Through the history of modern education, there have been a whole pile of literary and biographical complaints about school. And really what they're always complaining about is the form of didactic pedagogy. So one of the most famous literary characters is Mr. Gradgrind in Dickens' Hard Times. And he, in fact, the very opening page of Hard Times, if you go and look at it, is this horrific classroom where this dragon of a teacher is speaking to the students. And the way Dickens put it, he's considering his class as a whole lot of empty vessels that are going to be filled with facts, and they're going to listen to those facts and do as they're told and believe the facts and consider them true. So, Mr. Gradgrind's this classic teacher, a caricature of a teacher, and a caricature of your classic didactic pedagogy. Now, when it comes to some autobiographies, Winston Churchill tells this incredible story of what it was like to be in his Latin class, how he just didn't get what the purpose of it was. So they were doing their Latin declensions, which are all the different forms of Latin verbs across different cases. So there's the nominative case, which is the subject. There's the vocative case, which is I'm speaking to somebody. There's the accusative case, which is the object of the sentence. And in fact, there are 6 major cases in Latin if you really want to know. So, I can say the table is the subject of the sentence, which is the table is standing in the corner, or I'm putting something on the table. So now the table is the object of the sentence. But also, if we're going to learn about the vocative case, mensa is the word for table, we can say, oh table, I'm talking to the table. And Churchill says, why on earth would we talk to a table? As a young child, he couldn't understand why on earth he was doing Latin grammar. It made no sense to him. And Churchill writes this quite beautiful autobiography called My Early Life, just about his early years, which is beautifully written. He was a great writer, where there's this very funny incident where he's in school wondering what the purpose of it all was. He became a great English writer. He never got why they were teaching him Latin when he wanted to be reading stuff in English and writing in English, but that's not what the school did. By the way, these texts are on our website that go with these videos. So if you want to read Mr. Gradgrind in Dickens and you want to read this extract from Winston Churchill's My Early Life, you can go to the books, but of course we've got extracts from them on the website. Moving across the other side of the world, we have a boy going to school in China in the 19th century. His name was Yang Foley. He wrote an autobiography when he migrated to America late in his life, and he talks about this laborious copying down of characters, remembering the thousands of characters that there are in the Chinese character set. Later on, it's about memorizing Confucius, the Analects, the Great Learning, and it's about recitation from memory. And he also talks about the quite shocking forms of corporal punishment that were meted out to the kids if they didn't remember what they were supposed to remember. And now back to Europe, back to England. Charles Darwin describes in his autobiography the school that he went to, which taught nothing but Latin and Greek. And he said he could remember learning 40 or 50 lines of Virgil or Homer, which he forgot 48 hours later. So he could get through the class and remember it. He hated doing it, and he got through the class. Meanwhile, outside of school, he explored nature. He and his brother had a chemistry lab in the shed. And his intellectual inquisitiveness, his interest in the world, which later became his great intellectual achievement, was just simply not satisfied by the school. And another example, Audrey Lorde, an African-American writer who lived her life in New York City, describes going to school in Harlem. Her mother had already taught her how to write with a pencil, but when she first went to school, they gave her a crayon, which she couldn't really use because they thought she wasn't as advanced as what she was. And it was a painful experience for her as a young African-American girl going to school, and the assumptions that were made about her. So all of these stories are these classical caricatures of these didactic pedagogies and teachers who operate in that kind of frame of reference and people's classically horrific experiences of that. Now, what I wonder is how many students in classrooms today have the same horrible experiences of school for one reason or another. Maybe they're not quite the same experiences of school, but nevertheless feel as if school isn't giving them what interests them, what turns them on, and so on.